Okay, so welcome. So today we're going to try and just run through how to create the coursework. So the first thing we do when we set up the Visual Studio is to make sure we're running the right project. We've got the C# version. It's going to be Windows and it's desktop, and we would like the WinForm user interface, so not the app, and it must be the .NET framework. So let's press next for this. In regards to the form, what we need to do is just make sure that the project is named correctly. So we're going to put cars database. So that should be okay, and let's just create that. Oh, I already have that, so I'm just going to put car database 2. Okay, so we have our form first. We've got this form 1. I know it's a little zoomed out, but the most important thing for now is to make sure it's named correctly. So if I go back, I'll zoom in now. If I change this to rename it to FRM cars, just confirm that's the right one. Yep, and press enter. Okay, we have that correct. Now that that is done, let's make sure that our other form that we need to create is completed, so the FRM search. So if we go to the project file and add a new form, and we want to make sure it is the form Windows one, so let's add that, and making sure it's FRM search. So if we add that now, we have two forms here. We have one form for the search and one form for the car. So what we need to do first for both of them is, if we click on the properties, instead of form 1 we say task A, my name and the date, and I'm just going to copy that because we're going to use it for the second form as well. Let's try that again. Perfect. So now both of them, if we zoom in, both of them have the correct form. So task 1, and that will be task A, Nathan. So that's what we need for both of them. For the car, if we go back to the car, I'm going to look at the properties and change the color. So if we go to the background color, I'm going to change it to custom. Oh, that's an ugly green. Let's a bit lighter. Perfect. So we've got the custom one. That's okay. And let's add the label now. So if we go to the toolbox, we can just grab the label and insert it in. Let's make it a little bit larger in size and change the font. And now let's change the label of that to, I think it's Bowman Car Hire. Press enter. Let's just confirm that. Yep, and we'll put that at the top. Perfect. Okay, so now we have our form. We need to create our database. So if we go to the project, we go to add new item. We want to make sure it's in data. Let's zoom in a little bit. We go to service-based database. I think it's important to make sure that it stays that name. I don't think Visual Studio is great when you start changing it, so I'm just going to call it database 1. If we add that now, we've added that to our database. We're then going to go to View. We're going to go to Server Explorer, and as you can see, it's already there. If we click on it, we can then create or make a new table. So I'm just going to insert the correct field names for it. So if I quickly add that, so copy, paste, I'm going to change that to varchar. Where is that? There it is. I just need to quickly make sure. So that's 10. We go down to the next one. Make. We go down to the next one. Engine size. We go down to the next one. Date registered. We go down to the next one. Rental per day. Go down to the next one. Available. We need to make sure that the data types are correct. So that's the varchar 50. That would be 10. Date registered, that is date, rental talk per day. I'm going to put that decimal to 2 places. And availability, I'm going to put as a bit. In terms of our car, I'm going to call it TBL car. So I'm going to put it here, TBL car. So then if I then have a look, we should be able to update our script. So it generates it. If you rename the database, so you don't call it database 1, it doesn't do this script generation very well. So let's update the database and let's refresh that. There we go. So let's add just 2 or 3 records to make sure that we have some data there. So to add the table information, let's show our table and let's copy across some of the information. I'm going to do Mazda, engine size 1.6 L, date registered 12/06/2007, 90, and that's 0. The next one is let's do Ford, engine size again 1.6 L, date the 13th of April. Now this is 95. 95, and that is available. Last one. Again, let's do Ford. Let's do 1.4. Let's do 23rd. Oh. Rental is 65, and then that is also 0. Okay, so we save that. If I just refresh it, that's saved. Okay, so we have some data in our database. Let's attach it to our form. So attaching it to our form, we need to go to the data source. So we're going to go to View, Other Windows, Data Source. We're going to add it to our form. So we go Database, Dataset. We're going to use our database one. So next, this is fine. And we're going to do the table car one. So let's finish that. So we now have that in. So let's send this across. So we've got the register, the engine size, date registered, the rental per day, and the availability or not. So we have that. If we start it, you can see that we have our records here. So that's a good start. Okay, so now we're going to put our buttons there and match up the functionality with the buttons. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to try and get rid of this this checkbox. Let me have a look at the text. I'm just going to remove it. So it's like that. And now I'm going to add the buttons. So if I go to View Toolbox, bring up our buttons or our toolbox, we go down or go up to the buttons. Let's get button 1. I'm going to change this to update. So let's call this up. Oh, I'm going to hang on. Let me zoom out a little bit. There you go. So I've added a button. I'm now changing the name to update button. If we go down to the text, I'm going to change that to update. If we have a look at the background color, okay, well, let's just keep it like that. So we've got the update button. I'm going to get another button. Now we're going to keep it as add. So let me just quickly change that. Button name, I'm just going to put it as add button. And we go down to text. We're just going to put add. Going to look at the next button. Delete. So let's get this one. I'm going to change the name to delete button. And I'm going to change the text to delete. Let's look at the next button. Got search. Let's change this name to search button. And we'll change the text. Oh, we'll change the text to search. We now look at the next button to cancel. Yeah, change that to cancel. And let's look up and change the button name to cancel button. We look at the next button first. I'm going to change that to first button and change the name to first. If we look again, we look at previous. So I'm going to go and change the text to previous and change the name to previous button. If we look at the next one, I'm going to look at next. Let's have a look. Change that to next button and change the one to next. And we're going to do the last one. So let's change that to last. And we'll change that to last button. Oh, and we now need to add exit to the menu or to the form. So let's just quickly add that. And then we can start adding our functionality to it. Okay, so if we double click the exit, it brings up our exit button. Click. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a message box that says you are quitting the program and then application exit. This will just allow us to quit the program. For the rest of the buttons, what I'm going to do is I'm going to link up the functionality here with the button. So for example, if we look at the first item, I'm going to click at the first item. Then in the properties, I'm going to find the name. So we copy the name across. We then click the button we want to match the functionality to. And then we have that functionality inserted into that button. And we're going to do that for all of them. Okay, so what I've done is I've now attached all the functionality. So if you look at here, we've got the previous item that I took from the name. With the next button, I've got that move next item object, and I use the perform clicks. So for each button, we just need to make sure it's matching up with the object and then the perform click method. So that I've done that for each one. So that's almost complete. For search, it's slightly different. So if we click search button, we want to open that other form. So if we say form search, so we create the object. So I'm just going to call it F2, which is form 2. Then we say form search, and then we can use F2 show. F2, the show method, that'll open up the second form. So if we run it, you can see that the buttons are now working. Maybe if I zoom in a little, the buttons are working. And if we put search, it takes us up to the second form. What I've done for cancel is I'm going to do it so it just cancels anything that we're writing here. So for example, what I'll do if I double click cancel, I've taken the text box's name, so the name for each text box, that name, oh sorry, I apologize. I've taken the name for each text box, so for example, that name, that name, that name, and that name. And basically I am just saying I want to set the text attribute of that object to nothing. So if we run it, if I do last, it will cancel that out. Okay, so what I don't like is it's cancelling out the set, the saved the saved one. So I'm going to be changing that a little bit so it just cancels out the ones that we are going to add to. So if I close that down, we'll have a look at that. So to fix that, what I've done is I basically have taken the information here. This loads the data into the table. I've just inserted it at the bottom. So if we start now, if you try and cancel some save data, you cannot. However, if you add a new file and you type some data in and you cancel it, it will cancel that. So it'll cancel it'll cancel what you've inserted into it, but it will not delete the old data. Okay, so one thing that I have noticed, and if you play around with the code, you should find errors in it. So for example, if you press add and you press add again, it'll come up with an exception. So we don't want this, so we don't want the program to stop. So if you're playing around with the code and you're creating exceptions, what I want you to do is I want you to find where the exception is. So for us, it's the add button. So we want to add a try catch statement. So we're going to say, look, try this. And if an exception happens, and for this, I'm just going to say a main exception rather than the specific exception. I'm going to say, oh, let me bring it up so you can see it clearly. I'm going to say we want to output a message box. Just say you have clicked the wrong button. Please click the previous button to save. Okay, so we're trying that. So if we go back, and we try that again, and we press add and then add again, it comes up with an error message. Oh, let's show that on a big screen. So again, if we press add twice, then there's an error, and then we have that try and catch. So you should be playing around with the code. If it can produce an error, then there's a problem with it, and do a try and catch one. So it doesn't do this. It creates that message box. So again, the important thing is that you're putting the code in the try catch. And let me just zoom in. So you're trying this code, and then if it's not working, you're displaying a message box rather than stopping the computer. So we've completed our first form. We now need to make sure that we have our second form. So remember, our second form is going to be looking a little bit like this here. So if we go back to that data source and we bring up our card table, so we've got our table here. So that matches that. We then need to create two buttons, close and run. So let's quickly do that. So I'm going to name this close button, and that should close. I'm going to create another one, which is run button. Oh. And that will run. We now need to create a couple of labels. where are our labels? Down here. So we got one for field, or we don't want that. We just want to put in the text box. We want to say field. If I'm right, we also need the operator. So let's get the other label. And then the last one is value. So we've got our three table or our three labels here, and we are going to create some combo boxes for each label. In the first one, if we look at it, it should list all the field names on it. So if we go to the field name and we go to collections at the bottom and click this button, we need to put all our field names. So let's say, I'm going to say ID, vehicle, reg, number, make, engine, engine size, day, registered, rental per day, and availability. Okay, so available. So if we press OK, now the operator is a little bit more tricky because we're basically, when we run this, depending on what the field is, well, basically what will happen is we want to search our table or database based on the field. So we might say, give me all the Ford cars. So we'll search make, and then we'll say compare it to Ford. But if it is a string, you can only use compare. You can only use is equal to. But if it's a number, you can use greater or less than. So depending on what the data type is, depends what operator you can use to search for it. So you need to use an if statement there to kind of find out what values or items should be in this one. Okay, so if we click on combo box 1, and if we go to properties, now instead of properties, we want that lightning button called events. And basically when we, let's do select value change. So if we look here, so every time a value is changed in combo 1, what we are going to do, if I just zoom in for a bit, we're going to clear combo items. So everything in combo items get cleared. We're going to then select what the value is in combo 1, and we're going to decide which array to insert into our combo 2. So if it's a number or a date, I'm saying we're going to insert this so we can compare. If it's not a number or the date, then it's going to be inserted into this. So I've just done a nice if statement with an or in the middle. So it's either this or this. And then I use the combo 2 items add range to insert my array into the combo box. So if I then press start and I press search, you can see that if I do, let's say make, it's only got equals. If I do rent per day, suddenly you can use quite a lot to compare. So what we need to do now is then, oh, actually that's a mistake. That should not be a combo box at all. That should be a text box. So what we'll have to do is we can write a value in there and then run it, and then that will allow us to search our database. So I'm going to change that to a text box, and then based on the field, the operator and the value you're searching for, when we press run, it will modify this. So that's the last thing that we need to do. Oh, my close button doesn't work either. So let me quickly do that as well. So if I just cancel that and exit that, if we go back to search, do close button, I'm just going to write this.close, which will close that. I'm then going to delete my, if I go up, I'm going to delete my combo box, and I'm going to put a text box. There we go. Excellent. Okay. So if we now click on run, so what we're going to do is we're going to be trying to get the values from those fields and then run and change or filter our database or data grid view. So I've done the code already, so let's just quickly zoom in. So what I've done is I've gotten the 3 values. I've gotten the text box 1 text. I've trimmed it so it gets rid of the spaces. I've got the combo box 2 text and put it in the operator variable. I've got the field variable from the combo 1, and I've just created an empty string variable that we'll use later on. So the first thing I do is I just check to see if our text box 1 is empty. So if that's empty, it will show an error message and then stop. If it's not empty, it will check to see how many items combo box 2 has. So if it only has 1 item, then we know it's a string. So what I do is I create a query. So basically this is a string value. So it's saying the first 0 here is linking up to this variable. Number 1 is linking up to this variable. So it's comparing the field with the value here. So make sure you get the query quite right. And then we're filtering it in our data view. So if it's a string, it will do this. Else, if this is more than 1, then we know it's a number. And so I say, look, if the op is equal, then we're going to perform this this operation on the 2 values. If you notice, they're the same structure. So we've got 0 and 1, and that's because we have 2 variables here. Then if we look here, we've got greater than, less than equals than, and greater than equals. All of the structure is the same, so if you get one right, all you need to do is then start just changing the operator. Okay, so hopefully you can just pause the video and have a look through here. This value, what this allows us to do is it actually allows us to filter the data that we're getting from the database. Yours should be called the same if you've named your table the same as mine. So let's have a look. If we go to let's put this more in the middle and then zoom in. So if we go to search, let's say I want to look at make, I then put equals and I search Ford and I run it, it'll bring up all the Ford ones. If I search engine sizes and I put 1.4 litres, oh sorry, that's wrong. If I put equals and I put 1.4 litres here and I run it, that'll bring up here. If I search and I choose rent per day, and let's say it has to be greater or equals than 90, and I run it, it'll bring up those values. So you can see how the search is updating that. I just want to point out that I think with data register, even though I've put as a number, if we put the value in, it creates that error, so we can't perform a less than on our system data. So if you want, you can try and figure out how you can do that, or what I'm going to do in this one, to cheat a little, is I'm just going to put everything in a try-catch. So if I put all this in a try-catch statement, so from the top to the bottom, sorry, and when I catch an exception, oh, that was a wrong place. I put it in the wrong place. I think that's okay. So if we run it now, and we go into the search bar and we try and search it, and we run it, it comes up with an error rather than an exception. So we try and run it again, comes up with an error, so at least it doesn't create an exception. So we should now have completed all the tasks that we need to complete. So there are always ways to improve this. You can easily improve the code that I've written, but hopefully that's enough to kind of get you a good understanding of how to complete the tasks.